Hi, I'm Randall. You might know me as...
Randy, where are you? Randy.
Yeah. Hang out with Captain Q long enough, and you'll end up buying a boat. And I'm no exception. So join me as I navigate the ups and downs of owning an old sailboat. Now that I have the boat in a location that is really appealing, it's got warm water, beaches, excellent day cruising destinations. It's taken the pressure off of me a lot. I don't feel the urge to have to get out of a marina or fix stuff on a certain timetable. I can really enjoy just sitting on it, sitting in the engine room, digging through the bilge, or rowing ashore and going to the beach. So that's been pretty great. There are tons of local destinations as well. There's Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, Cuttyhunk, Newport, Rhode Island, Block Island. You can cruise up to Cape Cod and Chatham or Provincetown fairly easily, so there's really no shortage of destinations and day trips or weekend trips if you want from this area. So I also want to rave about my new friends at the FL Trip Marina in Westport. It's a family-run marina that's been in operation for about 100 years, and the crew there is super friendly, helpful, and really down to earth. Especially for someone who was new like this. I had a lot of questions, and they were happy to take the time and make sure I was well taken care of. I made regular weekend trips to the boat for the rest of the season and even managed to squeeze in a few midweek trips. It was super fun to have this little floating cottage out there and spend some time listening to podcasts and music while I try to sort everything out. If there was a periodic rainstorm, I just enjoyed the coziness of the wooden interior. It was super fun to have this little floating cottage out there in such a beautiful setting and spend time listening to podcasts and music while I try to sort things out. I found myself sitting in the main cabin looking at Google and watching videos and stopping to look up diagrams, and everything about that was really enjoyable. In one of my first sailing trips out from this new base of operation, I brought some non-sailing friends out for a sail, and we were tacking back and forth, and one of the tacks, my leech line, got caught on one of the spreaders and ripped it out of the pocket. I presume that part of the jib was already worn, and so there was an opening where the leech line would catch on the spreader. I was really kicking myself for not noticing it earlier, especially since I had the footage of the leech line looking less than tight. For those of you that don't know what a leech line is, it's basically like a drawstring similar to what you might have in a pair of swim trunks, and it's stitched into a pocket. And it's set up on the leech of the sail, which is the trailing edge. In this case, it's designed to put tension on the leech to reduce flutter and also control the sail shape. And mine was clearly undone and kind of flapping around, and I should have known to just cinch it up, but I didn't, and it caught on the spreader and then ripped it out. So now it's dangling out there in the air.
I dangle in the wind.
All the time, and it's something I'm going to have to fix. Otherwise, I'm going to have to roll up the jib every time I want to tack just to keep that leech line from catching on the spreaders. It's something I could repair by stitching up that leech line pocket, but this jib is also pretty tired. I was talking with some new friends of mine who run Precision Sails. Both Ron and Daryl have been to several of the boat shows, and we were talking about sails. And Daryl told me he's got this pretty great calculator for every single sailboat ever made that you can quickly get a quote on. It allows you to get pretty much instant pricing for any sailboat ever made. A new jib for my boat would run somewhere between $2,800 and $9,000, depending on how fancy I want the sail material to be. I also priced out a new main, and a new mainsail would be $2,700 to $8,000, and a mizzen would be $1,700 to $4,400. So all in, if I wanted a full set of basic sails, it would run me somewhere between $7,000 and $21,000. I may just budget that out and buy one sail every year and try to figure out which one is the oldest and the most sad of all the sails. But it's great to have that pricing, and so I'd highly recommend, if you are in the market for sails or you're curious about what a sail replacement would cost, check out their website. Here's the link to it. It's super easy, and they're clever enough to give you a lot of options based on different types of material. Great little company. I think overall the boat is a little bit under canvassed, as they might say. The sail area to displacement ratio is a little bit low. That's a good thing for newbies out there, to check out the sail area to displacement ratio. make the boat a little more comfortable, I wired up a new forward shower sump. I had noticed that it was disconnected when I used it and all the water drained out into the bilge. But after that, I also saw that the plumbing wasn't correctly connected. So this time I connected a new shower sump and wired it correctly and plumbed the plumbing correctly, and then found an electrical source from a nearby light fixture to tap into. I tested it out and had a really steamy shower in that forward head. It was really great. And I have to say, taking a shower like that in a small confined space after a day in the sun wearing sunblock is pretty refreshing. I took the cockpit grates home. They were getting a little bit weathered and I wanted to strip them down. It's something I can do in the off season. It's something I can do at home. So I stripped them down and rebuilt the varnish on them. And I think they look pretty great. One of the motivators was that the aft cockpit grates had a couple of key fractures that I could only see getting worse. So I ended up doing 7 layers of Total Boats Gleam varnish, and that went on pretty quickly and easily. In retrospect, is that I should have sealed the underside with some penetrating epoxy in order to protect the varnish layers on the top. Moisture will soak in from the bottom and then it'll compromise the surface of the varnish on the top side. So this next time around, I'm going to put penetrating epoxy all around the underside and the holes in the grate to really seal it up and then give it a few new coats of varnish on the top. My goal is to make that not require as much maintenance, but there's only so much you can avoid because these are directly in the sun. They also have a lot of foot traffic on them as well. They take the most beating on the boat, is the bottom line. So the antifreeze leak. I saw antifreeze in the bilge on the very first splash on the maiden voyage. Despite my wishful thinking, it didn't cure itself. I was hoping that it was maybe somebody that just spilled some as they were trying to top it off at the dock, but that wasn't to be the case. It got a little bit worse and I found myself pouring more and more coolant in, and every trip I would check the levels and see, oh boy, it's going a little bit more and more dry. And at the same time, I was pumping out more antifreeze out of the bilge area underneath the engine and putting that into a container. We did the trip down from Maine down to Massachusetts and it seemed okay, but it was definitely losing some. The good news in this case is that it's dumping the antifreeze under the engine and not into the cylinders and then burning it off, which would produce a really white smoke. That usually means something catastrophic, like you have a cylinder head that's cracked or you have a leak. So this is a good kind of leak where it's just dumping directly into the bilge. So after talking to a few people, I suspect that, Walter Schultz suggested it could be a freeze plug that's gone bad. It could also be some loose hoses. So those are really straightforward problems to solve. And so that's kind of encouraging. But the engine room is so dark and so much of it is obscured that it's really hard to see where the leak is coming from. Even if I put down white paper towels or some type of absorbent cloth to try to trace it, I still can't seem to find it. So this is part of what's going to be high up on my to-do list, is to get some better lighting and some better visuals on the engine. What I'm likely going to do is to redo some of the lighting in the engine room and clean it up. And then I'm going to rent a pressurized coolant testing kit from my local auto store and see if I can pressurize it and then see where it's leaking from. And obviously, since I'm going to be on the hard, I will have a much better visual than if it's dark and down below and I'm out at sea or I'm on a mooring. So the mission here is find the leak, get as many cameras on it, put down the white paper towels or white paper cloths to pick up the leaks. It's got to be somewhere logical. I think it's just a matter of finding it. So hopefully that will be a relatively easy find once I get the proper visibility on things. I had an amazing sail with my friend Michael again. I managed to convince him to come back and hang out with me on the boat. We took it out on a really nice spring day to bring the boat to Newport, Rhode Island. We had great sun, good conversation, had some food. We even had a decent amount of wind that kept us cooking along. We put the boat on a mooring and then I went to button things up, and my usual checklist is to check the bilge just to see if there's been any water. And this was a complete shock. When I pulled up one of the cabin sole boards, I was totally stunned to see that the bilge had a massive amount of water in it. I dunked a little piece of wood down below and did the taste test, and sure enough, it was salt water. This was total panic for me. Here's a reenactment of my panic.
I've got to get out of here.
Calm down. Get a hold of yourself.
I've been a bit paranoid based on the sheer number of through holes, so that's where I looked first. I went through all 23 through holes, and to my surprise, I found nothing. In fact, most of the through holes were dusty, so no sign of any water. So that's partly good news or great news, but then where is the water coming from? And the answer is what Walter alluded to in his more recent visit that we kind of fast forwarded to. This little culprit.
It's the last gasp right before you do an April 15th, 1912 reenactment. You get to be Leonardo DiCaprio floating on a door. That's got to go. How many bilge pumps you got in this boat?
I've got 3.
You need 12 if this thing lets go. Terrifying. Titanic, April 15th, 1912.
It's the poorly named dripless stuffing box. This was dripping about once every 2 seconds at rest once I put a flashlight on it. And I figured that when the drive shaft was spinning at full RPMs, it was really kicking off a decent amount of water. And I spent the better part of 3 or 4 hours after the trip really trying to figure it out and try to see exactly where the water was coming from, because I wasn't even sure that the actual bilges were connected. And based on the construction and the way that the bulkheads of the boat are set up, it didn't seem like they would be connected. It seemed like they would be more compartmentalized. With this amount of water, what had happened was during this time, I figure we took on probably 40 or 50 gallons of water because we were out there for about 4 or 5 hours and we were running the motor for a good chunk of that. And the bilge pump batteries were totally dead and my generator was not working. So I had no way to charge those batteries now. So I have dead bilge pump batteries. When the batteries ran out, it couldn't pump any more water overboard. So I'm left with, 20 or 30 gallons that I had to manually pump out. I reached down and I loosened the set screws on the dripless system just to see if there was any play in it, just to kind of see how it worked. And boom, water came gushing in really fast, kind of to panic level. Like, what have I done? And it's really hard to reach. It's almost a full arm's length away. So getting any kind of purchase on it was really tricky. So what I decided to do is push that in even tighter. And I pushed it into like a 0.5 millimeter gap, maybe a 1 millimeter gap. And that seemed to really stop the drip. So I realized that that's not ideal and it's probably going to wear out already worn faces of this assembly. It seemed like I'd rather stop it and wear out this dripless system, which has to be replaced anyway. So that immediately moves really high up my to-do list. I made regular exercise of hand pumping out the bilge and then put this item on the top of the list. I knew it was going to require hauling the boat and dropping out the propeller shaft. So I decided to just commit to staying on top of it and enjoy the sailing for the rest of the season. It's something I'm going to deal with later, for sure. So that's a wrap for this week. I'm really looking forward to accelerating and condensing the timetable so that I can get you closer to the current day status, which is I'm doing tons of work this whole off season and I'm making really good progress, making things a lot better, and it's really exciting. So I'm looking forward to sharing that as quickly as possible. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks very much to our Patreon supporters, because without your support, this really wouldn't be possible.